my friend? Can your heart stand the shocking facts about grave robbers from outer space?
Yeah, sometimes people ask me, because I'm considered to be this actually legendary cult film director, what is a cult film and what makes a cult film? And I guess a lot of people have different answers to that question.
I will perfect my own race of atomic supermen, which will conquer the world.
I think one thing that makes a cult film, if it's not really widely known, so that people who can have the feeling that they've found something that's a little kind of secret from other people.
You can't make a cult film. The audience makes a cult film.
Gooba gobble, gooba gobble.
We accept her, we accept her.
They're going to make you one of them.
Very often it's an outlandish subject matter. Maybe it's treated in a very strange way.
Get off of you!
And sometimes it becomes a cult film years later.
What plan will you follow now?
Plan 9.
Ah, yes. Plan 9 deals with the resurrection of the dead.
I think the thing that makes a classic cult film is its originality.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
That original concept, the idea of people coming up out of the ground, the living dead, eating brains to survive, whatever, that was original concept.
Good Lord.
I think what it's about is that it's camp. People love to have fun.
What a hunk of stuff!
The amount of times these people see these films, these cult films, is what's amazing. They know the lines. They'll say, "Watch out, Billy!"
Each generation gets a new onset of it. The old generation introduces it to the new.
Kid, this is Daisy. She's gonna teach you how to swing.
They've opened up a little niche for the independent filmmaker who has a personal vision, who can make a very good little film, and the audience does appreciate it.
Why did you kill me too? I want you to suffer.
I've always tried to sneak in and watch some of these films just to get audience reaction.
Who does she think she is?
That's my sister, baby, and she's a whole lot of woman.
You get people cheering and talking to the screen and just getting involved in the story. And when you can do that to an audience, I think you've got a winner.
Yes, folks, this isn't any cheap X-rated movie or any fifth-rate porno play. This is the show you want.
My name is Millie DeChirico, and I am the programmer of TCM Underground. I hate the fact that people try to say definitively that things are bad or good. I don't think cult movie fans are content with letting the popular opinion of a film sway their opinion of it. Whether it was somebody in your family saying you weren't allowed to watch that movie, or if it was a critic saying that a movie was bad. There's kind of a pleasure in watching something that somebody has told you not to watch.
I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget.
That's what I'm here for.
TCM Underground is a late-night playground for cult movie lovers, insomniacs, and anybody that's interested in fun, interesting, obscure, wild cinema.
Look!
When you turn on TCM Underground, you'll see aliens, fantastical worlds, zombies, you'll see assassins, killer children, killer dogs, cyborgs, flesh-eating monsters, a radioactive snake coming out of a toilet, ghost stories, haunted houses, aerobics, blood, guts, gore, eyeball gouging.
Aren't you out of your territory? Wrong side of the tracks for you, isn't it?
Does there have to be a wrong side?
TCM Underground started in 2006. It was influenced by a lot of late-night cable programming from the 80s. They played a lot of sort of like campy, fun B-movie pictures.
Okay, burn them out.
We also were really influenced by kind of horror movie hosts, Elvira and Svengoolie. We really wanted to establish a tone with the programming because we wanted to suggest that these were movies that were not going to be playing during regular TCM hours, that they were going to be like what happens when TCM goes away and, you know, we come on the air.
Here it is.
It started where it was kind of campy B-movies from the 50s and 60s. And I think that I've purposely tried to open up the scope of what TCM Underground can be because I feel like now a quote-unquote cult movie can be so many different things.
here, now, on this show, on air.
The way that I program it is that I want it to be sort of like a cool in-town video store that you can rent all kinds of movies in.
Cool. Real cool.
The range of movies that we played is really extensive. We play anything from blaxploitation to experimental film, from offbeat comedy to Night of the Living Dead, which is a classic film at this point.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I try to keep it very broad, knowing that it doesn't have to be like what everybody thought it was initially, that they were just midnight films. It can be a lot of different things.
Let's unload and hit the jacuzzi. I do my best thinking there.
What I think cult cinema is these are movies that are championed by a very passionate audience. And this audience has rediscovered, interpreted, or reimagined the meaning of these films.
I love these types of movies. B-movies just make me happy.
TCM Underground did a screening of Hard Ticket to Hawaii, and I think it was a great time.
Millie DeChirico is here with us. So many of these really bizarre movies have a very distinct vision.
Things that are a little different or rough around the edges and not 100% mainstream deserve to be seen.
TCM Underground is trying its best to be a purveyor of that community. I think that they love the discovery aspect.
What draws me to these kind of movies is seeing something that I've never seen before, seeing something new.
TCM Underground is the best of the bizarre.
It runs the gamut from 4-star to 1-star, A movie to Z movie, and having as many curated choices as possible for viewers is a wonderful thing.
Have a great night.
Out of sight, sister. If I hadn't dug it, I wouldn't believe it.
I want it to be the thing that I had when I was growing up, which is that I turn on TV late at night when my parents told me that I should be in bed, and I watch something bizarre or funny or interesting or maybe a little salacious. I love the idea that, people are getting together with their friends, like at a sleepover, or, everyone's coming home after a concert or a night at the bar, and they're just kind of sitting in the living room and they're just like, what? You can catch TCM Underground every Friday night, late night, starting at 2 a.m.
I certainly got myself an education.
Less well known is our second Wood film, Bride of the Monster. Produced several years before Plan 9, it took Wood a year to raise the money for the film. Then he shot it in 3 days. Bela Lugosi plays Dr. Eric Vornov, a Russian scientist hell-bent on creating a race of superhumans.
What are you doing to me? You will be soon as big as a giant.
He's aided by Tor Johnson, a brute who prowls the grounds collecting unwilling participants for Lugosi's experiments. Also lurking nearby is a giant killer octopus, which helps dispose of pesky eyewitnesses. Very convenient.
Now, Professor Stravsky, you will get a much closer view of the product of my genius. The alleged monster of Lake March.
Now, there is some question as to how Wood got his hands on this octopus. Legend has it he stole it from Republic Studios, where it had been built for the John Wayne film, Wake of the Red Witch. Some insist that Wood obtained the rubber monster legitimately, but what's not really in question is the thing didn't work and resulted in some truly unforgettable sequences with Lugosi. Anyway, Loretta King plays a reporter investigating the mysterious disappearances around Marsh Lake. Her detective fiancé, played by Tony McCoy, forbids her to venture out to the scene of the crime. Naturally, she ignores him, and things go downhill from there.
Who are you?
I'm Dr. Eric Vornov.
So here it is from 1955, Bride of the Monster. Night of the Ghouls, a sequel of sorts to Bride of the Monster, was filmed in 1959. Unfortunately, but not surprisingly, Wood was never able to raise the money to actually have the film developed, so the negative sat in a vault until 1983. The years to come were not kind to Ed. Alcohol took a heavy toll, and in 1978, shortly after being evicted from his apartment, he would die of a heart attack at a friend's house. He was only 54 years old. There's no denying that Wood was something less than a genius, but no film could be as beloved as Plan 9 and be as awful as it's made out to be. Could it possibly be as bad as some of the cookie-cutter product that gets hammered out by the studios on a regular basis? I don't think so. For TCM, I'm Rob Zombie. Good night. I'm Rob Zombie. This is TCM Underground. Ed Wood is widely and unfairly reviled as the worst director of all time, but it is impossible to hang that tag on a man who puts so much passion into his work. You can't watch an Ed Wood film without being taken in by his infectious enthusiasm. Tonight, we've got a double feature, Plan 9 from Outer Space and Bride of the Monster. Plan 9 takes its name from an alien plot to destroy the cities of Earth with armies of walking dead. Having witnessed the warlike nature of humans, the aliens assume that it is only a matter of time before the scientists of Earth harness the power of Solaranite, creating a weapon that could destroy the universe. It's basically Ed Wood's version of the day the Earth stood still.
What plan will you follow now?
Plan 9. It's been absolutely impossible to work through these Earth creatures. Their soul is too controlled.
It's widely known that Bela Lugosi died months before filming on Plan 9 began. But a simple thing like the death of his star couldn't deter Wood, who simply spliced in footage of his old friend and wrote the movie around it. Wood then cast a body double he felt had a similar skull structure and had him parade around on set holding his cape in front of his face. The result was hardly seamless. Joining Lugosi in Undeath is Vampira, famous in her day for introducing late-night horror flicks on a local ABC affiliate. She accepted a mere $200 for one day's work, but refused to recite any of Wood's ridiculous dialogue. While she never achieved mainstream success, Vampire remains a cult icon and has been immortalized by bands like the Misfits in some of their songs. Rounding out this trio of zombies is Tor Johnson, a veteran of several Wood films. Tor got his start as a professional wrestler, wrestling under the name of the Super Swedish Angel. Plan 9 was one of his few speaking roles, and as soon as he opens his mouth, you'll know why.
Have one of the boys take the guy and the girl back to town. You take charge.
Okay, Inspector. What are you going to do?
Look around the world.
Leading the alien invasion is John Bunny Breckinridge, one of the few experienced actors to actually appear in an Ed Wood film. Bunny was introduced to Wood by Paul Marco, who plays Officer Kelton in both of tonight's films. Plan 9 is introduced and narrated by Criswell, a syndicated psychic who also delivered his bizarre predictions on television. His opening monologue is an amazing display of utter nonsense, but profoundly sincere. It's pure Ed Wood, and here it is. From 1959, it's Plan 9 from Outer Space. Plan 9 was a total flop and quickly disappeared from theaters. It wasn't until decades later that it achieved a widespread cult following. I'm Rob Zombie. This is TCM Underground. Back before they were known as independent, filmmakers who operated outside the confines of Hollywood were referred to somewhat condescendingly as regional. Tonight we have a pair of films from one of the most influential regional filmmakers of all time, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead and The Crazies. Romero grew up in the Bronx and at an early age became obsessed with his uncle's 8mm camera. He began recruiting friends and family for these silent productions, which grew steadily more and more ambitious. A maverick from the beginning, he was just 14 years old when he was arrested for throwing a burning dummy off a Parkchester rooftop while filming a scene from an early opus entitled The Man from the Meteor. When young George wasn't filming, he was watching films. Romero was a gifted student who skipped a couple of grades, which made him an outcast at school. So he took every possible opportunity to escape into movie houses. In one instance, he went as far as to rent a tuxedo to convince his parents he was going to the prom. He snuck down to 42nd Street and caught Clifton Webb in The Man Who Never Was. Twice. After graduating high school, Romero wound up at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, studying art and drama. He failed to earn a degree, but supplemented his education by working summers as a PA on a number of Hollywood productions, including North by Northwest, an experience that fueled his passion for filmmaking, but soured him on the studio process. After cutting his teeth on a number of industrial films, TV ads, and documentaries, Romero and a group of his friends decided to take the plunge into feature filmmaking. None of them had a particular attachment to the horror genre, but it was decided that a low-budget horror movie would be easier to market than, say, a low-budget art film. Romero dusted off a short story he had written about the dead returning to life to feast on the flesh of the living, got 10 friends to pitch in $600 apiece, and Night of the Living Dead was born. The plot is pretty straightforward. On a trip to put a wreath on their father's grave, Barbara, played by Judith O'Dea, and her brother Johnny encounter a silent stranger who attacks them, knocking Johnny cold and chasing Barbara to a farmhouse, seemingly deserted but for a horribly mutilated corpse. There she crosses paths with Ben, played by Dwayne Jones, who boards up the house against the approaching ghouls, only to discover several more refugees hiding in the basement. A young couple, played by Keith Wayne and Judith Ridley, and the Coopers, whose daughter has been wounded by one of the ghouls. As the number of undead grows outside the house, inside, tensions rise as Ben and Cooper clash over how to defend themselves against the bloodthirsty hordes. When it was first released, Night of the Living Dead was met with disgust. One critic called it a cesspool of vile filth produced by sick minds for sick-minded people. Well, you be the judge. From 1968, here's George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. I'm Rob Zombie. Welcome to TCM Underground. Tonight we feature two Russ Meyer classics, Faster Pussycat Kill Kill and Mudhoney. Meyer began shooting film at 15, and it's a state of mind that Russ never quite grew out of and one that served him incredibly well over the years. Russ's father left before he was born, and his stepfather was basically a doormat. His mother, Lydia, however, was a fiercely protective woman, even pawning her wedding ring to buy Russ's first camera, a Univex 8mm. Russ served as an Army combat photographer during World War II on the beaches of Normandy and earned a Bronze Star in the process. Returning home, Russ got work shooting industrial films, but also found success as a photographer shooting spreads for men's magazines such as Gent, Fling, Escapade, and Frolic, and also Hugh Hefner's brand new magazine, Playboy. These magazines led Russ to a series of low-budget nudie flicks, but Meyer's obsession with the female form wouldn't allow him to settle for simple ogling.
You want to prove something, chickies? Let's see who the real chicken is.
Some people like to cast Russ Meyer as the godfather of porn, but Meyer despised the hardcore industry and said it was joyless and mechanical. Tonight's first film, Faster Pussycat, is the opposite of smut. The women are tough, strong, and somewhat superhuman in their appearance. The action centers around a trio of renegade go-go dancers. Varla, played by Tora Satana, Varla's girlfriend, Rosie, played by Haji, a favorite of Meyer's, and Billy, played by Laurie Williams. A chance meeting with an innocent young couple ends in murder. Varla and her girls drug and kidnap a young girl and hatch a scheme to rob a crippled old man of his money. Not surprisingly, the old man, played by another Russ Meyer favorite, Stuart Lancaster, isn't quite as helpless as he seems. Things quickly descend into a violent spiral of lust and greed that ends, naturally, in tragedy. Faster Pussycat is the ultimate mixture of sex and violence, hyper-injected with a bizarre sense of humor. What makes it so brilliant is that Russ tells the story with a completely straight face. There's no irony here. This isn't kitsch. It isn't camp. This is one man's pure vision. Juvenile, oversexed, and awesome. From 1965, it's Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. In a last-ditch attempt to reclaim some momentum, Browning pitched a project that would borrow from two of his biggest hits, Dracula and London After Midnight. It's difficult to go into much detail without revealing a crucial plot twist, but it's basically a murder mystery in which the main suspect is a vampire. Count Mora, the undead suspect, is played by Bela Lugosi, who pretty much reprises the role he played in Dracula. In case you're wondering about the strange wound on his temple, the script originally insinuated that prior to rising from the grave, Count Mora had engaged in an incestuous affair with his daughter, leading to her murder and his suicide. The studio had Browning on a short leash at this point, and the reference was edited out. From 1935, here's Mark of the Vampire. Mark of the Vampire, while not a hit, was marginally successful, but Browning's star was once again on the wane, and this time for good. He directed 2 more forgettable films for MGM, but was allowed to linger on working on odd script treatments here and there. Ultimately, he was relegated to the writing pool for a mere $200 a week. He left the business for good in 1942 and never looked back. He sought no biographers, penned no memoirs, and following the death of his wife in 1944, became something of a recluse. His last months became nightmarishly like one of his films. A lifelong smoker, Browning contracted cancer of the larynx, requiring radical surgery that left him a mute. Then a stroke left him severely debilitated. When he died in 1962, his will stipulated that there would be no wake, no funeral, no respects paid, or even wreaths laid on his grave. But he did request one thing, that an old drinking buddy named Lucky sit with him for the night and polish off one last case of beer. For TCM Underground, I'm Rob Zombie. Our second feature this evening was originally released as Rope of Flesh. Meyer found marketing difficult and quickly renamed the film Mudhoney. The film begins in Spooner, Missouri, with the arrival of California McKinney, played by John Furlong. Fresh out of prison after serving a 5-year sentence for manslaughter, McKinney is just looking for work, which he finds on the farm of Lute Wade, played by Stuart Lancaster. While working on the farm, McKinney begins to fall in love with Wade's daughter, Hannah, played by Antoinette Christiani. Unfortunately, Hannah is married to the sadistic, drunken Sidney Brenshaw, played by Hal Hopper, who is often seen guzzling corn liquor and carousing at a local cat house, where the main attractions are a pair of sisters played by Lorna Maitland and Rena Horton.
You better get your hands out of there. You're going to get in trouble.
Things in Spooner start to turn ugly. Sensing the burgeoning love between his wife and the hired hand, Brenshaw turns up the heat on the would-be couple with the help of a local Bible thumper named Brother Hanson, played by Frank Bulger, another Meyer regular. What ensues is pure Meyer: arson, attempted rape, murder, and mob justice.
Yay, an eye for an eye!
Oddly enough, there is something that both our pictures have in common tonight, and that is a moral. Evil is punished and true love prevails. And for all the lust, brutality that Meyer puts on display, at heart he is a square, a flag-waving patriot who believes in truth, justice, and the American way, and among other things, really big boobs. From 1965, here's Mudhoney. I'm Rob Zombie, and this is TCM Underground. Now, Brian De Palma is not necessarily the first name that springs to mind when you're talking about cult movies. But before he went on to mainstream success in Hollywood with films like The Untouchables and Mission Impossible, De Palma paid his dues and took his lumps as an independent filmmaker. Tonight, we've got one of his earliest feature films, the psychological thriller Sisters. De Palma developed his love of film relatively late in life. As a child, he showed prodigious talent in science. It was an interest his father, an accomplished orthopedic surgeon, encouraged. De Palma admitted later in life that he always felt unappreciated by his mother, which would no doubt be of interest to the many people who consider his films to be misogynistic. But he and his father always shared a close relationship, and young Brian would occasionally watch his father perform surgery, developing a high tolerance for the gore that he would later pour into his movies. Sisters tells the story of a pair of Siamese twins. Dominique and Danielle, who have been separated, at least physically, by a manipulative and obsessive doctor. The procedure has serious psychological complications, resulting in jealousy, hysteria, and, of course, murder. We meet Danielle, played by Margot Kidder, on a set of a game show called Peeping Toms. Voyeurism is another theme De Palma would revisit in many other films, including Body Double and Dressed to Kill. In this game show, Kidder is posing as a blind woman, tempting an unsuspecting contestant to watch her undress. After the taping, Kidder, now attracted to the man who chose not to spy on her, invites him back to her apartment. A murder occurs, witnessed through her window by a reporter, played by Jennifer Salt. At this point, a device comes into play that would become a De Palma trademark, the split screen, in which we see the same event unfold from two different viewpoints. De Palma would go on to use this double image in many of his films, including The Phantom of the Paradise and Carrie. But it has particular importance in Sisters, illustrating the fractured relationship between a pair of twins who have literally been split apart yet still share one consciousness. They exist simultaneously, linked and divided. From 1973 is Brian De Palma's Sisters. Our second Romero film tonight is another apocalyptic vision. However, in The Crazies, the force behind the horror is clearly man-made. A top-secret military bioweapon has been accidentally spilled into a small town's water supply, causing a highly contagious virus that leads to violent insanity and ultimately death. As in Night of the Living Dead, a major theme in The Crazies is the unsettling lack of distinction between man and monster. When the military rolls into town, clad in white hazmat suits, they become every bit as menacing as the disease. The violence that they inflict is slightly more organized, but no less gruesome. When martial law is declared, some locals resist, further clouding the picture. Are they infected or just defiant? The soldiers don't discriminate, and the carnage increases. In stark contrast tonight, however, is the pace of The Crazies. While the former is stocked with shuffling, silent ghouls, the latter hits the ground running with a berserk father dismantling his home and his wife with an axe, then setting it ablaze. And the action doesn't let up from there. The soldiers in their gas masks descend upon the town, gunfire erupts, helicopters swarm overhead, and military brass scream at each other over their radios. This is an unrelenting, exhausting, very in-your-face film. From 1973, here's The Crazies. Unfortunately for Romero, The Crazies was not a hit. It was re-released later as codename Trixie, but never found an audience until home video. Romero would get back on track with his next film, the revisionist vampire flick Martin. And following that, he would deliver the second of his Living Dead movies, Dawn of the Dead. Romero's films have been dissected, analyzed, imitated, and now remade, but rarely over the years have his films been matched in their ability to instill the feeling of utter dread. Romero's monsters are familiar because they are us. For TCM Underground, I'm Rob Zombie. I'm Rob Zombie. Welcome to TCM Underground. Tonight we've got The Conqueror Worm, a British film starring the king of American horror, Vincent Price. The Conqueror Worm takes its name from an Edgar Allan Poe poem that actually has nothing to do with this film whatsoever. In fact, the film was originally released in England as The Witchfinder General. However, the film's American distributor, American International Pictures, had already found great success with Roger Corman's Poe pictures, also starring Vincent Price, like The Pit and the Pendulum and The Raven, so producer James Nicholson decided to capitalize on the success of those films and simply tacked on Vincent Price reading from Poe's stories to the beginning and the end of the movie. The film is, in fact, based on a historical figure, Matthew Hopkins, set in the mid-17th century during the English Civil War. This conflict had thrown the country into chaos, and out of this chaos emerged Hopkins, a lawyer who found he could make a tidy profit in the business of extracting confessions from people accused of witchcraft. Confessions to these imaginary crimes were generally achieved through the use of torture. If that failed, other measures would be taken to prove their guilt.
You will each be tied in a prescribed fashion and cast into the moat, Should you then sink, you will know that your confessions are false. If, on the other hand, you are seen to swim or float, then your confessions of witchcraft are proven beyond a doubt in the sight of God.
Hopkins was reportedly responsible for trying and putting to death some 230 witches. Price actually wasn't the first choice for the role of the Witchfinder. Michael Reeves wanted Donald Pleasance. However, Price was a bigger box office draw at the time and was cast at the producer's insistence. Price and Reeves took an instant dislike to each other. Reeves felt that Price's over-the-top style would ruin the film. Price, on the other hand, found Reeves to be aloof and condescending. They clashed repeatedly on set, and Reeves is said to have deliberately antagonized Price in order to get the performance he wanted. Whether or not that's the case, Price delivers a chilling portrayal of a calculating, bloodthirsty sociopath who takes deep satisfaction in, as he puts it, doing God's work. Price himself has called it one of his finest performances. The film pulls no punches in its presentation of violence, and while it may not be particularly gory by today's standards, at the time of its release, the depiction of torture and execution shocked audiences. While Matthew Hopkins did exist, the film's storyline is fictionalized. Ian Ogilvy plays Richard Marshall, a young soldier who swears vengeance after Hopkins extracts sexual favors from his fiancée in an attempt to prevent the execution of her uncle. As his pursuit of the Witchfinder continues, Marshall's obsession grows until his bloodlust rivals that of Hopkins himself. From 1968, here's Vincent Price in The Conqueror Worm. With its themes of loyalty, honor, and revenge, it's been pointed out that The Conqueror Worm resembles an American Western. Throw in its wide vistas, galloping horses, and blazing pistols, The Conqueror Worm could be described as a John Ford film set in 17th century England. And with its unsettling depiction of religious fanaticism run amok, the persecution of non-believers, the hypocrisy of inflicting torture in the name of righteousness, secret trials, and shadowy judgments, the film maintains its relevance even today. Tragically for Michael Reeves, The Conqueror Worm would be the end of a short but promising film career. Despite his many clashes with Price, he would reunite with the star again on The Oblong Box. While in pre-production, however, Reeves, whose mental health had been in decline, was found dead of an accidental overdose of barbiturates and alcohol. Just 25 at the time of his death, one can only wonder what he could have achieved with the benefit of more experience and greater resources. For TCM Underground, I'm Rob Zombie.